Hello, it's Paul Beckwith again, and this is part 3. So please watch parts 1 and 2 because they all connect together. I'm talking about a crucial article called Coronavirus Why You Must Act Now by Tomas Pueyo, and it's simply the best article that I've read, and it explains the crucial difference between the numbers of cases, people that test positive, and the actual true rate. So this includes people that are positive but they don't have symptoms yet, so there's no way for us to know. What you need to do is you need to work backwards to come up with those numbers, and I was explaining how to do that, so I'll just continue with the article. Okay, so just Google it and have a look yourself. So here's the number of beds per 1,000 people in different countries. Japan, South Korea, the US is way down here, UK, Singapore, Iran, okay? South Korea is disconnected in terms of these two rates, the deaths over total cases, deaths over uh, deaths over closed cases, rather, deaths over total cases. Okay, cat's distracting me. Okay, South Korea, deaths over total cases is only 0.6%, deaths over closed cases is 48%. They're testing everybody there. With so many open cases, the death rate seems low, this number. But leaving the cases open for longer, so they close cases quickly when the patient is dead. Okay, they have lots of hospital beds. Okay, but there may be some other reasons, but the deaths over cases, total cases, has hovered around 0.5% since the beginning, suggesting it will stay there, heavily influenced by the healthcare system and crisis management. Okay, in South Korea. The age distribution in each country has an impact. I mean, he also talks about the Diamond Princess cruise that was stuck off Japan. Mortality is much higher for older people. Countries with an aging population like Japan will be harder hit on average than younger countries like Nigeria. There's also weather factors, humidity, and temperature, but it's still unclear how this will impact transmission and fatality rates. And I'll look at this in more detail, with weather's involved. Okay, so when you conclude is that there's other external factors that influence fatality rates. Countries that are prepared will see a fatality rate of 0.5%, South Korea to 0.9%, rest of China. Countries that are overwhelmed will have a fatality rate between 3 and 5%. So in other words, countries that act fast can reduce the number of deaths by a factor of 10, right? But that's just counting the fatality rate. Acting fast reduces the number of cases, so it's a no-brainer. Okay, a factor of 10. So what will be the pressure on the system, on hospitals? About 20% of the cases need hospitalization, 5% of cases require the intensive care unit, and about 2.5% require very intensive help, like with items such as ventilators and oxygen, ECMO, extracorporeal oxygenation. Okay, so this is the majority of the infections are mild, and then you have the severe ones and the critical ones. Okay, and some epidemiology, R0, 2.5, doubling time 7 to 10 days, community attack rate 30 to 40%, cases needing hospitalization 5%, ICU 1 to 2%, ventilators 1%. So if you project these things to the US, you can look at this sort of number here. Okay, these ventilators and oxygen units can't be produced or bought easily. A few years ago, the U.S. had only 250 of these oxygen units. If you suddenly have 100,000 people infected, they'll all want to get tested. 1/5 will need hospitalization. 5,000 will need the ICU. 1,000 will need the machines that we don't have enough of today. And that's just 100,000 cases. Okay, and then, even masks, right? The U.S. has only 1% of the masks it needs to cover the needs of its healthcare workers. 12 million N95 masks, 30 million surgical, versus 3.5 billion needed. If a lot of cases appear at once, that's only masks for 2 weeks. Okay, Japan, South Korea, Hong Kong, and Singapore, as well as Chinese regions outside of Hubei, have been prepared and have given the care that patients need. The rest of the Western countries are going in the direction of Hubei and Italy. So basically, if the healthcare system gets overwhelmed, or when it gets overwhelmed, look at Italy. Okay, Hubei built 2 hospitals in 10 days, but even then it was completely overwhelmed. Okay, so there's a tweet here. If you're on Twitter, look up this guy and look at the tweet. He talks about the pressure in Italy. You know, healthcare workers spending hours in a single piece of protective gear, don't leave infected areas for hours. Many of them get sick. People driven from retirement. People having no idea about nursing, trained overnight to fulfill critical roles. Everybody's on call. Lots of people get sick. Then if they do, they have to go in quarantine for 14 days, so they can't work for 2 weeks. In the worst case, in the best case, in the worst case, they're dead. Okay, sharing equipment, very difficult. They have to do triage. They have to decide, who's healthiest, who's most likely to survive if they don't have the equipment. So basically, it gives them a fatality rate of 4% instead of 0.5%. Okay, if you want your city or country to be part of the 4%, don't do anything today. Okay, but what do we really need to do? We need to flatten the curve. It's a pandemic now, can't be eliminated, so we need to reduce the impact. We need to give the healthcare system as much help as we can. So some countries have been awesome at this. So look at Taiwan, which is extremely connected with China and yet still today has fewer than 50 cases. Okay, so here's the deal. If we reduce the infections as much as possible, the healthcare system will be able to handle cases much better, driving the fatality rate down. If we spread it over time, we reach a point where the rest of society can be vaccinated, eliminating the risk altogether, with the hope. Okay, so the goal is not to eliminate the virus, but to postpone it. Okay, so this is crucial. Here is why it is so important to act early. Okay, so this is, if there's no action on containment, you get a curve like this. Okay, and this is if you have a curve like this is the treatment capacity. It drops because so many people are infected and slowly increases as the number of infected people drop. The purple are badly treated patients, high mortality, maybe 3, 4, 5%. The green are well-treated patients, low mortality, 10 times lower, 0.4, 0.5%. Okay, so the whole idea is to balance out this curve. If you balance the curve, you decrease the purple significantly, badly treated patients, and you get more and more well-treated patients. Okay, this is crucial. The more you can postpone cases, the better the healthcare system can function, lower the mortality rate, higher the share of the population that will be vaccinated before it gets infected. So how do we flatten the curve? Well, you do the social distances. You shut things down. Okay? Current scientific consensus is that the virus can spread within 2 meters if somebody coughs, 6 feet. Otherwise, the droplets fall to the ground. Worst infection then becomes surfaces. The virus survives up to 9 days on different surfaces like metal, ceramics, and plastics. So we're talking doorknobs, tables, elevator buttons. The only way to truly reduce that is with social distancing. You keep people home as much as possible for as long as possible until this recedes. This was proven in the past, so the 1918 flu pandemic. So here's a couple cities. This is Philadelphia. They had a citywide parade on September 28th. Okay, so this is the death rates per 100,000 people in Philadelphia. Okay, in St. Louis, they moved rapidly to quarantine people, have social distancing. Okay, the first cases were seen on October 5th, and they did this social distancing 2 days later, and they really flattened the curve, so they had far fewer fatalities. Denver had a double peak. Okay, so basically, if you look at the total excess deaths, pneumonia and influenza mortality, and plot it versus public health response time, then the quicker the response, the much better off your city does. Okay, and this was from 1918, the flu epidemic in 1918. So St. Louis, for example, took measures 6 days before Pittsburgh and had less than half the deaths per citizen, per capita. On average, taking measures 20 days earlier halved the death rate. Okay, so Italy's figured this out. They locked down the region in the north, and then a day later they locked down the entire country. And we'll see, we can see how the numbers change in Italy, how much this helps. So we have to learn from these cases. Okay, so remember the Wuhan graph. There was a delay of 12 days between the moment when the lockdown was announced and the moment when official cases, orange, started going down. Okay, so, there's a couple things about containment. Containment is if you identify all the cases, control them, isolate them. That limits people coming into contact, coming in, identifies the sick, isolates them, uses heavy gear to protect their health workers, tracks all contacts, quarantines them. So Taiwan's done this, but China's done very well on this. The lengths at which it went to contain the virus are mind-boggling. They had up to 1,800 teams of 5 people, each team tracking every infected person who they interacted with, and they isolated the bunch. Okay, so they were able to contain the virus across a billion people country. But this is not what the West is doing. The U.S. banned travel from Europe, but the internal cases, but as of today, it's already got 3-4 times the cases that Hubei had before it shut down, and it's growing exponentially. And the travel ban in, if you look at the Wuhan travel ban, you don't see much difference here. 0% travel reduction, 40% travel reduction, 90% travel reduction. You don't see much. There's just a little delay in the daily incidence. Okay, so it really doesn't do too much. So what you need to do is, it only delayed the spread in China by 3 to 5 days. Okay, now reducing this is what people thought it would do, reducing the transmission rates. Okay, so you need to reduce the transmission rate by social distancing. Okay, not just by restricting travel, but by social distancing. Flattens the curve, delays the peak by a whole 14 weeks. Lower the transition rate by 50%, and you can see the epidemic even start, and you can't see it starting within a quarter. So the ban on travel is good. It bought us a few hours, maybe a day or two, but not enough. We need containment. Okay, we need containment. Sorry, it's containment. It's not enough. It's containment is the ban, but you need mitigation now. Okay, mitigation. You need social distancing. You need to lower the transmission rate R from that 2.3 number, 2 to 3 number, to below 1 to have the virus die out. So this is closing companies, shops, mass transit, schools, lockdowns. The worse your situation, the more distancing you need. You need these heavy things. Wuhan did it. Italy has done it because the virus is rampant. We need it done it needs to be done in all of these other countries, and the U.S. needs to do it. Okay? And it talks about the trade-offs and stuff, what you need to do in terms of closing. You need to close everything, Close all businesses. You can look at what these other places have done. And there's a model for when these things should be done, and there's lots more data, but I could go on. But the cost of, here's an idea. Here's cases, daily new cases. If no social distancing, if you do social distancing, starts on day n plus 20, n plus 21. If you look at cumulative cases, n plus 20, n plus 21, 40% difference in cumulative cases. It has to be done immediately. Okay? Has to be done immediately. So this is the most crucial article on the dynamics. Measured cases from the test, but actual true cases. Every country needs to know this. Thanks for listening.